Thank you for the opportunity to present on designing better obesity care services to address inequity. I'm going to present this topic in the context of 3 men who were admitted to hospital last year, and obviously some details have been changed to protect identities. All of these men were admitted with something called obesity hyperventilation syndrome, which is where the body, or particularly the brain, loses the ability to breathe properly, and we get drops in oxygen and very dangerous rises in carbon dioxide. Max, age 22, as you can see, had a BMI of 85 and had a hospital stay of 2 days. Mark, age 42, with a BMI of 75, had a hospital stay of 45 days. And Matt, age 52, with a BMI of 105, had a hospital stay of 20 days. Now, all of these men reported obesity in adolescence and adulthood, and Mark, in fact, had a weight of 160 kilos at the end of primary school, but none of them received treatment. Max and Mark are both unemployed, and Matt is on a disability support pension. Max and Mark live in the dead zone of Western Sydney, so they have no access to public transport and there are no local shops. And Matt lives in a rural area and therefore obviously has no access to public transport either. All men stay at home due to their inability to walk more than 20 metres due to shortness of breath, and Max is very concerned about going out in public and being seen. All live with one family member. Max, 22's mother, however, works full-time and he has no supports during the day. Mark is able to call on a cousin for both emotional and physical support, and Matt's actually quite well connected from a family and a friend point of view. Max and Mark both have history of complex trauma and mental health, and Matt has claustrophobia. So on discharge from hospital, all of these men were given access to in-home nursing support services, a follow-up with the multidisciplinary obesity service with virtual appointments and subsidised obesity medications. Now we're going to move to the current day. 2 of these men did very, very well and 1 of them did not. I wonder if you could pick which factor was the determining factor as to whether they did well or not. Well, in these cases, it was not their age or their body mass index or their mental health diagnosis specifically, but it was their social supports. Matt and Mark have both lost 100 kilos and 30 kilos respectively with the obesity modifying medications. They're off oxygen therapy and can now walk more than 500 metres and are presenting to a clinic in person. They're both socially more engaged and Mark is attending TAFE looking for work. But finally, Max, age 22, unfortunately, he self-ceased his medications and had multiple no-shows to the obesity service and was lost to follow-up. A month later, he fell and fractured his hip from a standing height. This is the sort of injury you'd expect in an 80-year-old female rather than someone who's age 22. Unfortunately, he was admitted to hospital and 150 days later, he is still there. He can only walk 10 metres and he's oxygen dependent. And his base bed day cost would be more than $100,000. Next slide. So in the context, I just want to make 3 points related to these stories. So first of all, very severe obesity is not rare, especially in areas with high obesity rates like in Greater Western Sydney and so South Australia and Queensland, as we've heard. And it is linked to social determinants of health and geographical remoteness. Second point, we're missing opportunities to treat severe obesity by not recognising the seriousness or the cost of this condition for individuals and for health systems. And finally, the care for complex obesity can make a difference to the individual and to health services, but it needs to be tailored and collaborative. And most importantly, we need to understand a person's social supports and respond to these. Next slide. So how do we improve the appropriateness, effectiveness, and reach of our obesity services to manage people living with severe obesity? Now, I think previous speakers have already talked about the need to improve access to multidisciplinary obesity services, as less than 1% of our population with severe obesity actually can access them. Also providing those services with effective tools, and that means subsidised obesity modifying medications and bariatric surgery, and they can make life-changing differences in the sort of people that we're seeing in our services. Integrated care really needs to be beefed up with clear communication and role delineation so we can start sharing care effectively, and also step up and step down strategies. Virtual care has a real role to support with on-demand content, live groups, and coach clinicians that can help people work through that content. And last but not least by any means, We need the capacity to address social as well as health and medical issues concomitantly, and mental health issues concomitantly. And the social issues are so important. And this can be done, for example, through peer-led and community supports, and definitely in-home supports, particularly around disability social services and hospital in the home, for example. And the last point I'd like to make is that geographical co-location of these components is not necessary for this work. And so rural and regional areas can be better services if we're more connected in the way we work. Thank you.